You can move that computer if you want.
Is this yours or mine?
It's yours. Hey, who's there? Somebody's there. It's almost 7. Type who you are in the chat box there. Well, nobody's there now. All right, it's 7 o'clock. We're live. And, Shelly and I are here. And as of right now, nobody else is. So we're just going to sit here and look at the computer for a little bit. Somebody's out there. Who's out there? Well, anyway, we're going to go. Okay, so name of the channel is the Campfire Trail. Hey, Ken, how are you doing? Hey, maybe just us. Well, somebody else is there. Somebody's showing up.
Turn this other light off.
Okay, which one?
This one.
Okay. And last week we had problems with the, we got to have a little bit more light somewhere. Try that one. Last week we had problems with the live feed with the thing freezing up on us. So if that happens and we can't tell it from our end. So if we start freezing up again, I think we got it fixed, but if it starts again, just type freeze up in there. We'll watch for it and we'll see if we got it fixed or not.
I think last time we thought they were saying it's freezing, and it's freezing outside.
Well, and the bigger problem was last time it was New Year's Eve, and so probably everybody was running on their computers and sucking the life out of our internet connection down here. We're at kind of the tail end of the line, I think, and I don't know how it affects it, but I think it does. So anyway, what we were going to do, we're going to just pick up kind of what we were planning to do last week and talk about it a little bit, which is getting started and on your homestead or off-grid or backwoods adventure. And if you hear if you're out there and you don't mind sharing, kind of let us know if you have already taken those first steps or if you're just still kind of thinking about it and planning it. And I would just be curious to know that. And this week we're trying something a little different also. We are I did not promote this real heavily across Facebook and kind of the one-on-one thing. So I don't know whether or not people are just going to pick up on it or not. It's kind of a little bit of an experiment. So it may be a very small, intimate little setting between just us and maybe 2 others because, we got 4 now. So anyway, yeah, type in if you are, again, if you don't mind, type in whether or not you've actually already made your move, you're on your land, you're kind of doing the thing out there, or if you're still just thinking about it and dreaming about it. And we're going to go into that in a little bit, but I want to address one other thing to start with, and it has to do with the snowstorm that came through here. 2 days ago, I guess it's been now.
Yeah.
And Ken, if I remember right, you're from out in the Virginia area, so I think you got hit by this too. And it was a lot worse in places than it was right here where we're at. We're in Southwest Missouri, and we were sort of on the bullseye of this thing when it was still 2 days out. But by the time it got here, it had shifted north probably a good 100 miles or so. And so we were actually not affected by it at all. It got cold, but it was not, we didn't get the ice and we didn't get the snow or any of that. So I've been in contact with realtors and been collecting things. Oh, that's right. You were kind of looking at maybe, was it kind of the Ozark area that you were thinking of, like Missouri, Arkansas, or was it just somewhere around there? That's what I don't know for sure. You're in Texas now. Okay. It must have been somebody else that I was chatting with a couple of weeks ago that was from Virginia. So, so that process is something that can be Arkansas. That's right. Okay. That process is something that is Then we are going to talk about that tonight. Okay, it's how to take some steps and start making that happen. But back to the snowstorm for a little bit. I guess you guys down in Texas are kind of expecting one here in another day or two, aren't you? I wish you well. I hope things go well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, down there for that. But you know, we had been starting to talk quite a bit this last fall about the importance of kind of general disaster related preparedness. And this last week was almost a perfect example of that. And it was one where there was a heavy ice storm and snow. We'll be okay. Thanks. Yeah. So there was a heavy prediction of ice and snow, and the ice shifted a little bit farther north, and down here we get ice quite a bit, and it will take out power lines. And so I remember, I don't remember the year that it was, but back around 2000, something like that, we lived in a town about 30 miles north of here, and we got hit with a severe ice storm. I mean, it came right dead center right across our path where we lived, and it took out trees all over the place.
It was a mess. I
Yeah.
almost got hit in the head. I was going to go out and
by a branch.
yeah, I was looking at my water feeder,
The
bird feeder,
bird bath.
bird bath, and that water feature, and I thought, you know what, I think I better take it and move it. And about that time, I was looking out the window, and a big branch came down and broke it.
Yeah, she dove out of the way just in time. And we were without power for 5 days. Now, fortunately, we did not have a severe cold. It was right around 30 to 32 degrees the whole time, day and night. It never changed much for 5 days. So it was right around the freezing mark, but it wasn't severe cold. And so we had to, and we did not really have a backup plan. Now, it was after, I know it had to be after 2000, because we had, during the Y2K scare, we had bought, we did not have a good backup. We had, I guess Jim Horn brought a generator over to us in the middle of that ice storm, but it was a real small one that didn't really do much. And but prior to the Y2K, we thought, well, we don't know for sure whether or not, you know, the natural gas system was going to be disrupted or not. And I had gone out and bought a one of those wall-mounted propane heaters, so that we were kind of separated off. I had a 100-pound tank that we used to fuel it with. And so when we lost power, the first thing I tried to do was connect the generator up and run the furnace. I mean, I really only wanted to just run the furnace and a few lights. And it wasn't powerful enough to run the furnace. So that's kind of how small it was. I think it was a 1400 watt generator, and it just wouldn't do the job. And so we really had no heat. And we fired up that little propane heater, and it kept the house, probably in the 50s. It wasn't real warm.
It was still chilly.
Yeah,
though.
it was uncomfortably cool.
And we blocked off some rooms.
And we blocked off rooms and all of that. And unless you sat right in front of the heater, you did not stay warm. And so the whole point of that was, we learned after being out of power for 2 days or 5 days that we needed to have something a little bit more than that. Now, this ice storm that came through here this last week was one where it was going to be followed up with sub-zero temperatures. And so you really do need to have something as a backup when that happens. And so, you know, what we experienced back in that snowstorm up in Ozark or that ice storm up there was something that it was survivable without too much problem. Even if we hadn't had heat, we could have somehow, I think, come up with something to keep the house warm enough to where until they got the electricity connected back up. But, you know, that was one thing that to me was kind of a little bit of an eye opener. We've been without power for maybe up to a day at a time, but never 5 days at a time.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was the wake up call that I need a bigger generator. And I need to be a little bit more prepared with an alternate source of heat, just in case that ever happened again. And it hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened, and we haven't had a problem since then. But prior to that, it was something that, I kind of predicted that on one of the videos that we just shot, that this could be a life and death situation for people if they lost power for an extended period of time and they had sub-zero temperatures. I mean, you'd almost have to get out and go someplace where there was heat. Otherwise, you could freeze to death.
Yeah, you could. And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So.
And there actually was, I saw on the weather station the other day that there was actually, I guess, 3 deaths related to this storm in Missouri and Kansas within 24 hours. And I don't know what was the cause of that. It could have been auto accidents. It could have been anything. They didn't say. But the fact is that if you lose your heat and you lose and you have zero temperatures, bad things will happen.
So what are you suggesting?
Well, so what I'm suggesting is, and this feeds into the next segment here, where we're going to kind of talk about getting started on your plans, and that is when we came down to this property here. It's been about 3.5 years ago now. It's always been on my mind ever since that big ice storm up there that we need to have backup plans, and so people that know me real well say, well, he's not the prepper type. And it's like, okay, well, prepper and being prepared is kind of 2 different things. And I'm very, I'm very interested in being prepared for those kind of events. And so when we came down here, I said, we're going to get set up so that we never have to worry about this at all, ever. And so we've got, most people know that we've got a grid connection down here, but we're not reliant upon the grid. It's there for convenience, and it's cheap. And so we have that. And so we don't run, grid is not our primary source of electricity. We get our primary source from our solar plant that we've got. And so that serves what we've got here first. And then if that fails or gets depleted because of rain or clouds or whatever else, then it will drop back as a secondary solution to the grid at that point. So it's solar first, grid second. And if both of those things are failed, then I've got 2 generators. I can plug in one. If that one fails, then I've got a second one that fails or that will operate. Now, so that's kind of 4 steps of redundancy, which is kind of silly, but we had 2 generators so that we got that double duty thing at the end. And beyond that, I realized that anything that we have that produces heat, that's reliant upon electricity.
Got something right behind us here.
Yeah, is a wood stove. And so honestly, if we lost every bit of power from all of those sources, we still have probably a 3-year supply of firewood sitting just outside the house here. And
it multiplies.
and we really don't need any electricity. We can go full blown Amish or caveman if we have to. and it's really the heat source is wood and not electrical powered. When we were looking at getting our wood stove, we considered a pellet stove, but I mean, I'm glad we didn't do that. Yeah, the 2 downsides that I see with a pellet stove is that, first of all, you got to get pellets because you can't just stuff a chunk of wood in it.
Yeah.
And right out of the woods out back. And the other thing is that you do have to have electricity. Now, I know they make pellet stoves that are gravity fed and don't run on electricity. And I assume that they work fine, but you still have to get pellets. And if you're out of pellets, you can't stuff a chunk of wood down into the pellet stove. So anyway, that's why we chose to go with just a regular conventional wood stove, and are happy to do it. Now, we have lost power in the wintertime several times since we've been down here. And the story on the first one goes that, I woke up in the middle of the night. We were having a pretty good sized snowstorm down here. I think it was the first year we were down here. And I've got a bad habit. When I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll pop my phone on and look what's happening around the world. And so I was on Facebook and I saw everybody complaining about the power was out and people were getting cold. And I thought, well, I guess they've lost power up the road from us, because there were people I knew that lived, 15 miles from here. And I thought, well, they lost it up there, but I guess that we didn't lose any down here. And I kind of rolled over to go back to sleep. And then I got to thinking, I thought, well, maybe we did lose power down here, and the grid power is off. And I've told you about the plugins that we've got, like this one, right? Or is it right there? Okay. If you see a white plug-in or a white switch, that's strictly 100% off grid. That's our battery system and inverter that's running those white ones. The brown ones that we've got in here, and we've got a few brown ones in here, those feed directly in from the grid. And we'll explain the reasoning behind that at another time. But I got to thinking, well, maybe we did lose grid power down here and just don't know it. And because I could see the little lights, the little winky blinky lights on things that were running. And so I got up and I went and found one of the brown outlets that had other stuff plugged into it, and all of that was dead. So we did lose the grid power down here, but just kept going with the batteries on the inverter. And then the wood stove, I mean, we were just as cozy as could be in here, so that was not a problem either. So anyway, that's the whole idea of, planning ahead as many different options as you possibly can, so that you don't get stuck with your main option going down. And that's the important part of that. So as you plan your journey, keep those kind of things in mind. If you want to stay connected to the grid, like we are for now anyway, that's fine. But make sure you have at least one backup system, and make sure you have one system that isn't reliant upon the electricity at all, just in case you completely do lose it, no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm. And talk about, we have a gas stove here.
Yeah.
And recently,
LP gas.
Yeah. He was going to cook something this morning.
You're
going to make some oatmeal.
Yeah.
And tell him what happened.
Yeah. So this happens when it gets real cold, and so I went to click the stovetop on, it had no flames. And first time that happened, I thought, well, my bottle's out of gas, I guess. So I went and checked it. We've got 200-pound tanks out here, and one that's full and waiting, and the other one is one that we're using. Right now, our full and waiting one is empty. So I need to go get that one filled. But so I went out there to check to see that it was empty, and it actually felt almost completely full. And I thought, well, that's odd. And I remember we've had this before in real super cold weather, where we'd get rain that turned to ice and then super cold, is that the regulator would freeze up in it. And
I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that happening. But
well, I'm sure they have, because it's happened to us quite a bit. And
it does to us.
Just especially when the weather is real ice, frigid cold. And it has been that way for the last couple of days here. So anyway, what we figured out was that the regulator must be froze up on it. So it's not letting any gas pass through. And so when it warms up, it'll come back on. And but that's even one of the downsides of having LP as a backup source, is that you can even technically kind of lose the LP. Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard of people tapping on the regulators a little bit to shake them loose, and I haven't tried that out here. I may try that tomorrow just to see if it does the job. I don't know. Maybe I'll send Shelly out there to tap on the regulator. Go out there with a screwdriver and tap on it. And so anyway, that was the one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, was the sort of the emergency preparedness situation that you would go into. And then as it comes to planning your journey back to the land, keep those things all in mind as you're going, as you're headed in that direction. So let's talk a little bit about what it takes to make those. Hi, Lily. You're there.
Hi, Lily.
Say hey to Dave. Is Dave there with you? So, Southern Iowa. Are you under the blanket of cold weather up there?
I bet they got snow.
Where you're at? It might take her a minute to respond. So anyway, as we're talking about, making these first steps back to the land, you have to start thinking and planning all of those things out. But the most important thing, the thing that I believe that I run into that most people struggle with, is actually just making the decision and taking that first step to start with. Okay, that's where sort of the stall out happens. Okay, yes, no snow, just cold.
Oh,
Type in there how cold it is. I want to know that.
oh, you're
See,
mean.
ask Dave if his eyeballs are freezing.
He
And-
says they do sometimes.
You're
You're mean. That's so mean.
No,
Of course,
I
our
thought it
eyeballs
was-
are freezing here
I
today.
thought it was funny.
It's cold
So,
here. Oh, wait,
He's
yeah,
from
it
my,
is.
okay. So Dave is my cousin. Okay, Lily is my cousin. Dave's her husband, and their family. So Dave moved up to Iowa from Texas, and you talk about a shock when it comes to wintertime. He said the first year that he was up there, he went out to the barn and he came back. He came right back in. He goes with his hands over his face, and he goes, "I think my eyeballs are frozen." Because it hurt. I mean, it's cold. And oh man, it can get cold up
Yeah,
there.
it can.
Someday we'll tell the camping story where me and one of my friends went out camping on New Year's Eve
You guys were crazy.
in a wall tent, and
Crazy.
it started out above freezing, but by the next morning when we woke up, the actual temperature was 26 below zero. 20 right now. Well, that's not so bad.
Oh,
-3 wind chill
chilled
in the morning. Yeah,
Ooh,
you'll
that's
feel
not good.
that.
Yep.
But yeah, the wind chill on that night that we were camping, or the next morning when we woke up, was like 55 below zero, and it was miserable. We camped that one night, and we say that we get to say that we did it, but we didn't stay out there.
I don't think you got any sleep either because
No.
you kept putting wood in
It was
there.
tough.
Because if you didn't keep wood in there, you'd be cold.
Yeah. So back to this whole making your journey back to the land. There's so many things that seem like an uphill battle when you're first starting. It's like researching the land and figuring out where you want to be and what kind of a climate you want to be in. And then there's the whole process of just purchasing land. And if you're struggling getting enough money together to make a down payment or to just outright purchase it, I mean, that can be very, very intimidating. And so, as you start making those plans, I know so many people personally, and I see them online where they just kind of go right up to that point where they're just ready they just got to get there, but then can't pull the trigger on it for one reason or another. And so tonight's subject is just start. Okay. Where you're at, even if you don't have your place that you've bought yet, or you haven't even found it, or you don't even know where you're going yet, just start. Find things that you can do right where you're at that will start moving you along that path of getting to your destination, which is maybe a place out in the country where you can kind of spread out and do your things, whether that's the gardening or orchards or animals or any of that kind of stuff. Whatever is on your dream wish list, just find a way to start where you're at right now and start building towards that. Even if you're just doing a container garden on your back patio or something like that, if you live in a town where you can't really just like dig up a garden or have chickens or anything like that, just find a way to start developing the skills that you will need when you do get there, and start your savings account, start your piggy bank, and just start making some progress on it, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you can say, yes, I'm making progress on this. I'll get there someday, but I am making progress right now. Now, one of the things that you do, I mean, besides the physical, doing the gardening and all of that, one of the things that is going to be critical to you is developing skill sets. Okay. And so what are some of the skill sets that people would need to do that they can develop right where they're at right now, would you say?
I would say if you're going to put in a garden, you can start learning what vegetables go together and what kind of things to do to keep the insects down, and how to plan your garden.
Yeah.
And maybe they can draw it out on paper.
Yeah.
And then also on homesteading, finding the land, kind of think of some things about that, like which way, when it rains, which way is the water going? And
we kind of learned that the hard way.
yeah. And if I put a road in this property, where would that road be? And
We had to change that twice also.
so I'm telling you ahead of time. And the layout
Plan
of the layout of the land is really important to know what your layout is. But we didn't even know our layout. We just kind of, oh, let's look at this land. But I'm saying this is wisdom ahead of you now, that you can know to look at the land in a different eyes than what we did.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to the garden thing for a minute, because that is a big skill set. I mean, that's part of that emergency preparedness issue as well, is that getting whether it's a 2-week or a 2-month or a 2-year supply of food stockpiled up for either economic hardships or supply chain disruptions or any of those kind of things that we know and understand are real things. Building that up is something where you can start with a garden. And, when you go if you get on YouTube, you can find all kinds of container garden and hydroponic systems that are not complicated and not expensive. And especially the container garden things. I mean, it's just, it's just like a traditional garden, only it's inside a container of some kind. And those are good ways to start, where you can start right now. If nothing else, learning the process. Even if you can't do it at the scale that you want to do, you can start learning the process. And, it's been, how many years has this been since we did a garden? I mean, we did a garden in Iowa when we lived there, but that's been over 33, 34, coming up on 34 years ago. And we haven't done a garden since then until this year.
Last year we did that.
Oh, that wasn't a garden.
I know, but I did get a few things.
We got a few things out of it, but it was mostly just enough to encourage us that something will really grow here.
It was
the deer liked it, and the raccoons liked it, but
it was terrible.
We've taken steps to eliminate that as a problem.
It really wasn't planned. It was just.
It was, hey, here's some seeds. There's some dirt.
Seeds.
And the funny thing is, seeds and dirt will get you a long ways towards doing a garden. You don't really have to know a lot about what you're doing to get something to work. But but then the step past that is, what do you do to preserve that after it's grown? And that was another skill set that we had to kind of dust off. We did canning, 34 years ago, but we hadn't done it since, and didn't even have any of the equipment.
I still have more tomatoes in my freezer.
Yeah.
So when you do tomatoes and you don't have time to take care of them all, you can just take the whole thing, put them in the freezer, and then when you thaw them out, or when you take them out, you can put a little water on them, and it pops the skin right out.
Yeah, all it does is just thaw the skin layer, and the skin layer will just pop right off. So,
and if you don't want the seeds in your tomatoes, some of them big tomatoes, you can actually put your thumbs in there and squish all the seeds out and freeze them that way too.
Yeah. So all of those are things, or those two things are things that you can do right where you're at. And I'm almost confident you could do that just about anywhere. Now, if you lived in a high-rise apartment in New York City or some other big town, and you did not have a place to put any kind of a container garden, then that may be not the thing that you need to do. But even with that, I mean, there's hydroponics that you can grow right inside your house. So
yeah, I've seen some.
It's possible to do that. So find a way to start. Find something that you can start with that's going to start developing the skill set. If you've not made that jump or that big commitment back to the land yet. And here's another thing: if you get to the point where you're doing the canning, and there's two kinds of canning. Okay, most of you may know this, but there's a water bath canning and a pressure canning. And if you want to get into the water bath canning, it does not take a lot to do that. Even if you went to the store and bought everything brand new, along with a couple of cases of jars, you're into it for less than $100. And so it's not very expensive to do that. If you want to go to the pressure canning route, which you have to do on some things, but even that is, the canner itself is going to be $100, but then, all the rest of it, you're going to get into it for under 200 probably.
And once you've got it, then you can,
and once you got it, you
redo it again.
Yeah. And we've got both, and we do both.
But I do like my freeze dryer. Oh, that
Yeah,
thing.
well, and that's another
I-
level of food preservation.
We didn't
that,
know yet until we did it
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah, and that would be tough to do in a small apartment where you're
Right.
right next to other people because it does make some noise. And but we'll
But
get it.
still, it's
Yeah.
feasible.
Yeah, if you're just in like a single family residence, then that freeze dryer is amazing. I mean, we're going to be doing a video on that in the next, I would say, couple of weeks, and giving you our impression of having that for our first season. And,
I can tell you one thing. I made me a smoothie this morning,
yeah,
and I used my strawberries and peaches, and
all things that we freeze dried
yeah, I had
this last year.
cubed
Blueberries or blackberries.
blueberries. I cubed the blueberries, and I had a frozen banana I put in, but then all the other things were where all the other things.
It's amazing what you can do with food with a freeze dryer.
And it can store for a long period. Like the canned goods can store so long.
They say 2 or 3 years. I've had canned goods that were a lot longer than that.
Yeah, but this stuff can store a long time. The shelf life is
like 20 years is what they say.
It's good because,
and I don't have reason not to believe it. I mean, everybody says, yeah, that's really the case. So, and then another thing too with the canning, even if you don't have a garden.
I'll be right back. I gotta show something.
Are you gonna go get a prop?
I'm gonna
show and tell. Okay, so when down here in this area, I didn't even know about this until just this summer, and we would go to the local farmers markets and pick up produce. And if we weren't growing something and we wanted it, we would get it at the farmers market. And then I found out that most of the farmers markets around here, the people that work those, actually go to these vegetable auctions. A lot of them are run in Amish areas down here, and they will go buy it in bulk and then bring it to the farmers market and kind of divide it up into smaller segments and sell it that way. And I found out that's kind of open to the public. You can go right there. I know people that have gone to those farmers market or those vegetable auctions, and you buy entire boxes and bins and stuff like that of produce. And it's cheaper than farmers markets, and which is now cheaper than grocery stores for the most part. And so, our plan was this year to attend one of those, but we just got so busy with other things around here, we never did really get to one. But if you're in an area where they have those vegetable markets or vegetable auctions, just go there and load up. And then I watched a YouTube video where someone went and got their tomatoes. They didn't even grow tomatoes. They just went to the auction and they picked up 100 pounds of tomatoes to make all of their tomato preserves. And it was a fraction of what the cost would be. And they didn't have to go to all the trouble of tending tomatoes all year in order to reach that point where they would have enough tomatoes to do everything that they needed to do for the entire year. Now, what were you going to show? And then I'm going to get back to this other thing.
Wanted to show them my eggs.
Yeah, and I figured out how many eggs was in here.
Okay.
I think there's a half a dozen eggs.
Right there.
Okay, so to get a perspective on that. Okay, that is exactly between the two of us right here. So it's like I'm not even sure it's a pint size bag, but it's fairly small. And there's a half a dozen eggs in there. And you mix them pretty much 1-to-1 ratio with water, and they're raw eggs. So that was one of the things that we
the shelf life. What I like about it is the shelf life of these. I've got eggs now for a long time. Even if I don't have chickens, I have got eggs.
Yeah, and we decided a long time ago, we kind of like to travel a little bit when we have the opportunity, and we haven't had much of an opportunity to, but for that reason, we didn't want to get into the animal thing, at least right now. And I don't know, we may never, but right now we did not want to be tied down to babysitting livestock all the time. So we decided against doing the livestock thing. So we don't have chickens and we don't have goats. And as far as I'm concerned, we can never have goats and I'd be just fine with that. But so we get eggs from a couple of different sources around here. The store when we have to, but for the most part, we get farm raised eggs around here. And she bought, I'm trying to remember how many dozen eggs you got. Was it 10 dozen?
I think
eggs
it
or
was more than that.
14 dozen eggs.
14, 16, something like that.
It was a lot.
It was a
Okay.
lot.
And so we
But
just,
that's when I did all this.
yeah, we freeze dried almost, I think we saved back 1 or 2 dozen in the refrigerator for immediate use, but then we freeze dried all the rest of it.
Yeah, and I haven't tried them yet. I need to
Yeah, maybe we
open
need
one
to
up.
break some of those open one of these days.
We'll try to put it on video.
And yeah, they are raw, so I
Yeah.
mean, you do need to cook them, you know, when you get them out. But and you're not going to get an over easy egg out of a bag, okay? But we'll make scrambled eggs or use them in cooking. And,
yeah, you can easily use them in cooking.
And
it's powdered now.
Yeah. Do you need eggs to make pies?
In pies, I don't think so.
Unless you make a custard pie.
Unless you make a custard pie.
Yeah. See, now I bet we could make a custard pie if we would just do it.
Oh, you can do it if you want.
Oh, she's gonna let me in charge of the custard pie. I almost said mustard pie.
Oh boy.
Okay.
I don't know.
So anyway, coming back to the point. Okay, we chased a rabbit around the farm
have
on that one. But to come back to the point, find a place to start. I mean, you may not be able to do everything. You know, we had worked, of course, we're in our 60s, but we had kind of worked our way up to the point where when we were ready to do this, it's like, okay, we need to decide, we need to do it. And we just went and did it. And had kind of the finances arranged, and we had all of the stuff done, and just made the decision and did it. We understand that not everybody's going to be in that same kind of a position. And so you need to find incremental ways of starting that process. And you can always say, well, I'm going to wait until this happens, or I'm going to wait till that happens, or I'm going to wait till I have enough money. Or, some of you, if you're waiting for certain thresholds to be met, you may never get it done. So you need to start where you're at, and that will help build confidence. I can almost guarantee that if you start doing, if you can't raise vegetables, but if you raise them and start preserving them and stocking them up, I almost guarantee you that you will become more motivated than you would have been if you didn't. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're going to start seeing that, now I know how to do this. I didn't know how to do this last year, but now this year I know how to do it because I've done it and it's worked. And so when you do that, you're going to start building confidence in the fact that you can learn new things and you can apply them and start actually working your way along that pathway to fulfill your dream. And it's not that complicated. There's nothing. I tell people all the time, nothing we're doing down here is rocket science, even to the point of building a house, which we're doing right now. We're not doing it right now because it's too dang cold.
It won't happen until it gets warmer.
Until it gets warmer
we'll get back
again.
Down in there and do a little more.
Yeah, but even that is not rocket science. Okay. And I've got a background of building houses and remodeling and construction experience, but none of that is that difficult to learn. So it's something that you can even start applying yourself to learning the skills of building if you want to. Mm-hmm. And if you really want to get into the livestock thing, and even if you live in a town, most towns these days do have flexible ordinances when it comes to chickens, and backyard livestock. And when we were living in Iowa, they didn't allow chickens in town. I mean, it was kind of before that whole trend started up, but we went and got rabbits, and we started raising rabbits. And oh man, it's not hard to raise rabbits. I mean, you get a couple of them, and next thing you know, make sure one's a boy and one's a girl. But other than that, that's all you need to do. And
well, you got to have a bed for them.
Yeah, we built some hutches, but I basically, this was before the internet, and I basically found a book that had plans on how to build a rabbit hutch. How big to build them so that they had adequate space, and how to build a nesting box so that you could put in there so that they could build their little nest in there and have the babies. And so even that is actually, to me, probably even easier than raising chickens would be, because they don't need a lot of space to go free range or anything like that. You just kind of build them some nice hutches and build them well and manage them. And that's what we did. And man, we had more rabbits than.
And the manure was very good
Oh,
for
yeah.
the garden.
Yeah, the garden loved it. And we just they produced more than what we could almost use. And so I mean, the garden was good the first year, but that second year it just exploded. It just we had tomato plants that were like 9 feet tall.
They were
and
huge.
okra that you couldn't even reach the top of without bending them over. And so, yeah, so there's things that you can do. And I would just make a list of all of the things that you want to do someday, and then figure out the things that you can do
That's a good idea.
right where you're at right now.
Mhm.
And I would say that almost anybody, there's no reason why almost anybody couldn't start with gardening, or at the very least preserving food and starting to stock that up. And there's a lot of cost savings to that too. Now, if you have to buy it all and then preserve it, that's one thing. It's going to cost you more than if you could grow it. But it's a good place to start. That's simple. It can be scaled to the size of something that you can deal with, whether it's a half an acre garden in your big backyard, or whether it's a container garden on your back patio. You can scale it to something that works with you where you're at. And and jelly. We did a lot of jelly preserves when we first started, and we'd planted some grapevines, but they hadn't had a chance to mature yet, so we didn't have any of that. And so, believe it or not, we would just go buy frozen juice concentrate at the store and get the supplies to mix it with that, like the pectin. And we canned up all kinds of different jellies, apple jellies and grape jellies and cranberry jellies and all of that kind of stuff that we just used the little juice containers from the store. And it worked perfect and made good jelly. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Do we want to have any questions, or?
Yeah, if you have any questions, throw them out there. And,
yeah, we've been talking.
Are you still there, Ken? Because I've got a thought. Do you know what part of Arkansas you're looking at? Are you looking at northwest or a different part of Arkansas? We might have a resource for you if you're looking in the right space, right place. What else?
I guess putting it down on paper, I would say start putting it down on paper, because then you got something to measure against, whether you're getting going forward and being able to do that or not. No, he's too far away.
Okay, Newton County or Madison County. I'm not sure where either of those are at. I have to look them up. If it was up in the northwest Arkansas area, which I don't know where these two counties are, but if it was up in the northwest Arkansas area, I could hook you up with a guy that can get you listings, lots of listings.
All right. But I'm sure he can anyway.
Yeah.
There's tons of realtors.
Yeah, if you haven't
there.
already done it, I mean, whatever area you're in. Okay, so it is in northwestern Arkansas. Okay. Whatever area you're in, if you get a hold of a realtor there, I like to interview realtors, but we have bought and sold a lot of real estate over the years. So that's just something that I don't like to waste time with people that don't know what they're doing. So I kind of get to know the realtors a little bit before I have them start doing very much work. But any realtor can do this. And if you want, I mean, we've got a realtor that we know and trust very, very, very well that covers the northwest Arkansas area and southwest Missouri. And what they can do is they can put you on an email feed where all you got to do is give them a description of kind of what you're after. And you'll probably never hear from them again until you're ready to actually start looking at some things. But they'll put you on an email feed where emails will come to you every time a listing hits the market with any of the realtors across the entire board of realtors, local realty board. If it comes up for sale, it will get emailed to you that day. And so that you can look at it before the people that are just kind of kicking tires and shopping around get a chance to go out and look at them. So
actually, any realtor can
yeah,
do that.
well, that's what I said.
It doesn't just have to be the one
any
that we
realtor
use.
can do that.
Any realtor can do that.
But if you haven't already kind of interviewed and selected one out there, we can certainly connect you up with one.
You can
I should put my email somewhere where if you want to connect up.
put it in
You
the
know what?
chat.
I'm just going to type my email in here. If you want to get a hold, if you want information on that, just let me know. Okay, did I spell it right? LPS 1818. Okay, yeah. So if you want a connection on there, okay, yes, okay, yeah. I'll send me an email to that, and I'll get his contact information and send it back to you. His name is DJ Hilton, and him and his dad are realtors around here, have been forever, and they're really they're honest, they're good, they're friendly, they're efficient. And I don't have a lot of patience when I'm dealing with buyers and sellers when I'm a buyer or a seller.
Poor honey.
And DJ has kept me out of trouble because it's like I reach a point sometimes I was like, tell him to forget it. I don't want to mess with this anymore. And DJ will say, let me talk to him and I'll smooth it out. And he does. And I mean, he's an excellent guy to have in your corner. So yeah, send me a message. I'll get his contact information and send it back to you. And you don't have to worry about it. If you're not ready to make the move this year or next year or even 5 years from now, talk to him and just tell him to put on that email list. And all you have to do is just give him what you're looking for. Say, I want at least 5 acres and I want, I want it to be raw land, or I want it to have at least a well on it or something like that. And whatever you tell him to do, he'll plug that into his computer. And that way, every time a listing comes up, it will automatically email to you. He doesn't even have to mess with it. It's just his computer system will do that.
It's the way the realtor systems work.
Yeah. And, a lot of people don't even realize that exists. And so, I mean, I'm on 2 or 3.
A long time.
I'm on big acreage list. So every time a big acreage comes up for sale, I get a listing on it. I'm on a lakefront list. I'm on a list of anything that's within 30 miles from our location here. And it will, so every day I get listings from him that are brand new, just coming online. But they'll also send out, the computer will also send out if there's an existing listing that you've been kind of having your eye on, and all of a sudden they change the price. Maybe they lower the price by $10,000 or something like that. Anytime there's a price change, it will send it out to you as well. So you know what's happening all the time. So yeah, that's a good.
Well, there's only 2 people on.
Yeah. I'm going to do one other thing. I mean, I know there's not many people there, so.
He's
a couple of years ago, there were so many people asking us about land. They knew that we dealt in real estate some, and was always asking, and I couldn't keep up with all of the people that were asking questions about how do you buy land, how do you make a purchase it, how do you finance it, all that kind of stuff. So we ended up, shutting everything down, and I scrambled out a book real fast called Back to the Land. And what it is a 30-day process of each day. There's a set of challenges that you do to start getting that roadmap for yourself developed. So if you're interested in that, it's an Amazon thing. I'll put a link to it. After we get done with this, I'll put a link to it down below in the description, probably tomorrow sometime. And that way you can get that. If you're interested in it, it doesn't mean anything to me if you don't. I won't be offended if you don't.
all right.
So, yeah, anything else? Just start. Just find a way to start.
Just
start doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us.
I don't know if Lily is still out there or not, but if you are, hey, good to see you there. And I suppose that's it.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I'm going to leave this up for about 1 minute. If anybody out there has got another question, now's the time to do it.
There's only 2 people out there.
Well, that's okay. This time around, I can make people crazy on Facebook with my postings and my listings and my videos up, and we're doing a live feed and all that. So I just decided, if they want to be there, they just need to make the point to be there. like Ken, you made a point to be there. Lily, you're still there. Okay, so it must be my audience must be Ken and Lily. Okay, and yeah, it'll this whole thing will be up by tomorrow, just as regular video, I guess. Still not quite sure how all that works,
right.
but anyway, thanks for coming
Thank
in,
you.
and we'll see you. We're going to do these every Tuesday night, so if you don't have anything better to do, pop in and say hi, and
Maybe you can talk about what it is you're going to do on the next.
I don't know what
one
I'm going
ahead.
to do.
Well,
How about that?
okay. I just have to figure it out. All right.
Well, you can always, jump on our regular YouTube listings and make comments on what you'd like to see us talk about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might just ramble around, and that's kind of what we do. So, all right. Well, thanks a bunch for showing up. And I guess if there's nothing else, we'll see you next week. And we're ending the stream right now. Wait, where does it go? We'll no longer be live. Of course we won't. So end.